I didn't see him. What are you looking so sad about, Jeff?
I'm surprised at you. I mean, I'm really insulted. I mean, that's not right what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I mean, I'm getting a drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talk. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talk about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, one time during my career, I was on a Formula One tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
We just on the tour.
What's happening, my people? It's Cast Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Box Story, bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Miss Cass, Al Booger. Salute to everyone and welcome to another episode of Cast Sports, the Box Story. Today, boxing during World War II has the family today. It's Tuesday, still early in this big week of boxing history. Today we're going to talk about boxing during World War II. Little bit of history. We got a little nice article about Joe Louis and his contribution to the war effort. He didn't do any combat, but he made a big contribution. We're going to talk about the boxing. Madison Square Garden had 40-something fights the final year of the war. We're going to talk about boxing at Madison Square Garden during the war. Some other things, all about boxing during World War II today. Okay, but how's everybody today? We got 5 fights coming up this weekend. We got one Thursday, 3 Friday, one Saturday. I guess they getting us ready for next week because next week is the big fight week for Canelo and Bud Crawford. Yup, it's upon us. Next week is fight week. Okay? Tomorrow is going to be the forgotten fighters from the Golden Age. You know, when you think of the Golden Age of the 70s, you think of Ali, Frazier, Foreman, Norton. But we also had some other great fighters that made the Golden Age, like Jimmy Young, Jerry Quarry, Ron Lau, Jerry Cooney, Ernie Shavers. And tomorrow we're going to focus on Jimmy Young, Jerry Quarry, Ron Lau, Jerry Cooney. None of those guys won titles, but any other era before or after, all four of them would have been champions. They were just in that golden era. So tomorrow is going to be forgotten heavyweight fighters from the golden era. And then Thursday, we're going to talk about boxing in Cuba. And this is the first Friday of the month, so we're going to profile an active boxer. It's going to be Earl the Truth Spence this week. I guess he's still active. But let's get ready to get into our fight of the day now. Okay. But how's everybody? It's Tuesday, still early in the week. I was having a little trouble getting the fight of the day going a moment ago. Let me see if it's working yet. And then we're going to get on into it. And boxing during World War II today. That's a good. We're going to talk about, they had a thing called smokers. They did aboard ships. They were just fight cards that they did aboard ships for morale. And sailors might have had beats. They put on the gloves, put them in the ring. And this one fight card on the ship, the president of the time, Harry Truman, was on board the ship and was present at the fight card. We're going to talk about that fight card. One of the sailors whose fourth son told the story of it. We got that today. Joe Louis, and then some other fighters, boxing champions that served in the military. All that today on Cast Sports The Box Story, bringing you all that boxing history. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, there we go. I got it. All right. Okay, let's get into the fight of the day. Nothing beats a failure but a try. Okay, so without further ado, let's take a look at today's fight of the day now. Okay, the fight of the day for today is Alexis Arguello versus Ruben Castillo, January 20th, 1980. Another KO for El Flaco Explosivo, or the Explosive Thin Man. Okay, another KO for El Flaco Explosivo. In English, that's the Explosive Thin Man. There he is. Arguello versus Castillo, January 20th, 1980. The fight of the day for today. Okay, let's get into that. Gotta have our fight of the day. Now, it is 1980, and Alexis Arguello is a two-time world champion, already regarded as a future Hall of Famer, if not already an all-time great. The Nicaraguan is the proud bearer of the WBC Junior Lightweight Championship belt, and such is his reputation that the WBC's number one contender, Frankie Baltazar, cannot accept the offer of a title shot. because his manager, Jackie McCoy, won't let him inside the same ring as Arguello. Suffice to say, no higher compliment can be paid a reigning champion than top contenders turning down chances to fight him. Okay? Here's the explosive thin man again. Now, Arguello, he was a champion so deadly, contenders turned down title shots. Like I said, no higher compliment can be paid to a champion. The top contenders turning down title shots, okay? So they had to be a bad man. Salute Mike Mazik. How are you today, Mike? Fighter of the day. Alexis Arguello, the explosive thin man versus Ruben Castillo. And like I was saying, the explosive thin man was so good and dangerous, the top contenders were turning down championship fights. Wow. Don't get no more dangerous a fighter than that. So instead of Baltazar, it was Ruben Castillo, a featherweight, who was offered the chance to battle for Arguello's title. Now, unlike Baltazar, Castillo decided a title shot is a title shot, even if it isn't in one's preferred weight class. The fight took place in Tucson, Arizona, and was carried live on ABC's Wide World of Sports. Now, Castillo was undefeated in 45 fights, but he had yet to face a truly formidable contender. And considering the young Texan was moving up in weight to challenge the explosive thin man, the bookies made him a solid 5-1 underdog. In truth, those odds were definitely on the generous side. Arguello was at his peak, and Castillo had almost no chance at all of winning. Okay, had almost no chance. And there's the explosive thin man against Alfredo Escalera. That's when he got his second weight division, the title he currently had, super featherweight, against Escalera. That's that fight right there. Okay, what's up, Mike Grimm? Salute. How are you today, Mike? Fight of the day. Fight of the day is the explosive thin man, Alexis Arguello versus Ruben Castillo. And the number one contender, Castillo, was coming from featherweight, a division below super featherweight. The number one contender at super featherweight wouldn't get in the ring with Arguello. Okay? That's how dangerous this man was, Arguello. The top contenders didn't even want a title shot against him. Right? Okay. So, but despite this, the challenger put up a valiant effort. The crowd was solidly behind the American, and he gave them plenty to cheer about in the early and middle rounds, as he boxed with discipline and intelligence, moving away from Arguello's power and then countering with quick punches when the champion left himself open. He showed speed and good hustle, while Alexis patiently pressured his man, landing heavy shots to the challenger's ribs and belly when he had the chance. Yeah, there's Arguello and Castillo right there doing this fight. Now, Castillo was game, but he was fighting a losing battle from the beginning. He was coming up from a weight class below, was 45 and over, had never been in there with anybody near the level of Alexis Arguello. And he was a 5-1 underdog, and everybody thought that was generous. Many people gave him no chance of beating Arguello. But if Castillo was keeping the fight close and even winning rounds, Arguello was clearly stronger and more powerful. His body attack was taking its toll, and by round 8, Castillo was running out of answers, not to mention stamina. In the 10th round, the fighter they called the explosive thin man punished the challenger with power shots to both head and body. And in round 11, a left hook to the liver put Castillo on the canvas. Clearly in agony, he bravely got to his feet, but the referee wisely stopped the fight, giving Arguello his 13th championship win. Castillo fought a very good fight, said Arguello afterwards. He knew what to do out there. He boxed me very well, but I knew I would begin to hurt him and slow him down. I have a lot of respect for Ruben. He has nothing to be ashamed of. Yeah, there they are again during the course of the fight. I thought I was doing very well, said Castillo. I was surprised at how strong he was. Much stronger than I thought. I didn't want this fight, but the money was too good to turn down from now on. And he said, from now on, I'm only going to fight as a featherweight. Yeah, that was his first fight above featherweight, okay? But he said he was going back down and wasn't coming up anymore. Now, the challenger boxed with courage and skill, but he was in the ring with a prime Alexis Arguello, and something more was required to defeat this future legend. Very soon, the explosive thin man will move up to the lightweight division to become only the sixth man in boxing history to win 3 divisional world titles. And only the awesome offensive force that was Aaron the Hawk Pryor in an all-time great battle could stop Arguello from winning in a 4th division. Meanwhile, Castillo's game effort earned him another chance at championship glory just 3 months later, and this time at featherweight where he belonged. But once again, Castillo found himself confronting a true ring great. Wow. He went from Arguello. This time he was in there with Salvador Sanchez, the Mexican virtuoso who would later become a legend. The one and only Salvador Sanchez was in the opposite corner this time against Castillo. And while Castillo was again competitive and lasted the full 15 rounds, the close decision went to Chavez. But he was in there with some legends. Those two right there gives him a good resume. And back-to-back, Arguello and Sanchez. Wow. But there's your winner of the fight of the day, the explosive thin man, Alexis Arguello. Okay, let's get to boxing during World War II today. Okay, well, how's everybody? We got 5 fight cards this weekend, right? They getting us ready for the big one. Next week is fight week for Canelo Alvarez versus Bud Crawford. It's upon us. Came around fast. I still got Canelo. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed to make me think Bud will win this fight. Nothing. But Bud ain't gonna do like Mel. Mel made a business decision, you know. Mel said, I just got tagged by this big dude, man, and I'm earned my biggest payday already. I'm not gonna go in there and get all chopped up. And Mel just took it easy. Bud gonna go in there and compete. Uh-oh. Mike Massey got Bud by knockout. Yeah, Mike still got Bud by knockout. Okay, Mike. Yes. Woo. Wow, Canelo ain't never been off his feet in 67 fights. Triple G couldn't do it. Oh no. I got Canelo by decision. Bud gonna have to get a decision, he's gonna have a type of dominating performance like Bivol had. And then they tried to take it from Bivol, 115, 113, remember? So Bud got to pretty much get a knockout, Mike. Because he ain't getting no split decisions or nothing like that. You know, nah. But today, boxing during World War II. Okay, there's Joe Louis and Sugar Ray Robinson. When Joe Louis had that group of boxers going around the world touring, doing exhibitions, Sugar Ray Robinson was one of them. Yep. What's up, Technique? Technique says, Mike, no chance. I gotta agree, Technique. The salute Technique today is boxing during World War II. Yes, Joe Louis and Sugar Ray. Sugar Ray was one of the fighters. Like we was talking about yesterday, when Jake and Sugar Ray had their second and third fight in 3 weeks, that was the reason, because Sugar Ray was on his way into the military and he wanted to have that third fight before he went. So they had it 3 weeks later. And remember, in between the fight in 3 weeks with Jake, Sugar Ray had another fight in between that, 2 fights. So he had 3 in 3 weeks. And remember, Jake had another fight 2 weeks after that. Them guys was just built different, man. You know, Sugar Ray fought 3 times in 3 weeks. Jake fought like 3 times in like a month. So yeah, they were built different. Yeah, I got the decision, but if anybody do any knockout, it's gonna be. But Canelo not really a big stop. He got like a 61% knockout ratio. I think 63 wins. He got 39 knockouts. So, and yeah, he gonna carry Bud like he did Berlanga and that last guy and the other Mexican guy. You know the one before Berlanga. He dropped them all. He might even drop Bud just to show he can do it, and then take him 12 rounds. But it's next week. That's the most important thing. Next week is fight week. Wow. Man, I didn't even realize until yesterday. I was like looking at it and said the 13th is next Saturday. So yeah, we are right there on it, man. Canelo and Bud. Yep. Next week. I've been saving my pennies. I got to get that one. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about boxing during World War II. That's what we're doing today. Okay. Oh, I need this light. Okay. Yeah. I still got Canelo by decision, though. Boxing during World War II today. Okay. How's everybody? It's Tuesday. I rather to say Wednesday. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about some of the other great boxers from the golden age of the 70s. They'll never get mentioned. You know, you always hear Ali, Frazier, Foreman, Norton. But we're going to focus on Jimmy Young, Jerry Quarry, Ron Lau, and Jerry Cooney. Because any other era before or after the golden age of the 70s, all 4 of those guys would have been champions. But they didn't win a title because they were just wrong place, wrong time. But nowadays, either one of them would probably be undisputed heavyweight champion with these guys fighting nowadays. Any of them, Lau, Quarry, Young, or Cooney, could beat anybody in this era, beat them up, I think. Okay. So that's tomorrow. Thursday, boxing in Cuba. Friday, the first Friday. So we're going to look at an active boxer, Earl the True Spence. Now, like I keep, is he still active? Well, he's going to be active Friday when we talk about it. But he haven't fought since that lost to Bud in 2023. You know, it's over 2 years now, right? Because it was in July 2023. So going into the 3rd year since Earl fought, man. What is going on? He's been trying to fight, I think. I don't know, but we'll see what happens. Okay, boxing during World War II. We're going to start for real this time. Boxing during World War II. But salute to Technique, Mike Rim, Mike Mazik, Al Booger, and Miss Cass in the building so far. Okay. Now, during World War II, boxing was used for military combatives training, shipboard morale events called smokers, and as a propaganda tool for patriotism, with many popular boxers like Joe Louis serving overseas. Now, however, some boxers also endured horrific conditions, fighting in death matches for the German SS officers in concentration camps. Now, the war also led to boxing title divisions being frozen. resulting in the emergence of new challenges and historical fights. Now, boxing in the war effort, military combatives. Now, boxing was a key part of the curriculum for World War II combatants, with specific sequences and combinations taught to soldiers. Okay? Patriotism and propaganda. Now, boxers like Joe Louis used their platform to promote patriotism, and many popular fighters went overseas to fight. Lou Ambrose even auctioned his gloves at a war bond rally for a substantial sum. Morale and competitions. Boxing events known as smokers were popular on battleships, providing a way for crew members to resolve disputes and boost morale. Your smokers would just fight cards on ships. You know, like I said, boxers have a beef or something, put the gloves on, or for morale. And they had this one smoker on this one battleship. I'll tell you, I forgot the name, but I got it. It's in the notes. We're going to talk about it later. President at the time, Harry S. Truman, was on board and attended the fight card. It was called Smokers. Yeah, President Truman was there and he attended the fight. And the story was told by one of the guys, sailors that was on the car with their son, told the story about that. Yeah, President Truman was there and he shook this fighter's hand. The impact we're going to cover that later. Impact on boxing. Frozen divisions. Now, the war caused many world championship divisions to be put on hold, sometimes for 5 years or more, leading to a new era of challengers and non-title fights, right? Emergence of new talent. Now, the absence of many world champions allowed new contenders to gain household name status through 10-round non-title fights. And then we had the horrors of the Holocaust, right? Forced fights. In the Nazi concentration camps, emaciated Jewish inmates were forced to fight to the death for the entertainment of German SS officers. Now, survival and memory. The survival of boxers like Harry Haft and Tadeusz Pietrkowski in these horrific conditions at these camps is a testament to their skill, though their experiences have been the subject of books and films documenting the atrocities. So let's talk about Joe Louis, his contribution to the war effort. Okay, yeah, Joe had made a big contribution. He went overseas. He didn't fight, but he did some exhibitions and stuff and speeches. He was a big morale booster to the troops. He really was, Joe Louis. And I told y'all about Ezra Charles. Ezra was crazy. Excuse me for one moment. I gotta kill this light. Yeah, Ezra Charles was crazy. But hey, he got my respect though. Now, like I was saying, Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson, a lot of other boxers. Joe had this group of boxers that would go around and do exhibitions around the world and entertaining the troops. And when Ezra went in the army, they offered Ezra to be a part of their group. But Ezra said he didn't want any special treatment. He wanted to just be one of the guys. And Ezra went and fought on the front lines. He could have just went around and did exhibitions and boxed, but he put himself in danger on the front lines. But he happened to be at one of the camps where this group came to, and he ended up getting in there boxing Joe Louis. Yep, Ezra. He wasn't that well known then, but he was known after that because he did a very good job against Joe Louis. Yeah, I'm right. I can't wait for it. Easy technique. Yeah. That's two of the biggest names in the sport. We don't get that a lot. And then, it's just intriguing to see how Bud going to do, move up all these divisions. Now, if Bud went from 147, 154, 160, 168, I might be picking him for this fight. If he did it, but just jumping up like, and he's really coming from 147 because he only had one fight at 154, right? So I don't know, but yeah, I can't wait to see it. Yeah. And I just wondered, I don't even think they got the entire undercard put together yet. I only see a couple of fights on the undercard, so yeah. But yeah, Joe Louis, we get ready to talk about his contribution during the war effort now. Yeah, Joe. If I could stop talking about Bud and Canelo. But it's next week. So, yeah. Everybody is looking forward to that one. Biggest payday for Bud. Oh, man. Come on now. Been looking at this all morning. There it is right there. Okay. From boxing gloves, Joe Louis. From boxing gloves to combat boots. Okay. Boxing gloves to combat boots. The Brown Bomber. There he is. That was one of the posters they made of him. Joe Louis says, "We're going to do our part and we'll win because we're on God's side." Okay. Now, Joe Louis was boxing's heavyweight world champion when he joined the United States Army and fought for his country and his community. But he didn't do any fighting. But he went around and did his part. He kept the morale of the troops up and all of that. I got a story in here about this one boxer. We'll get to it. This one soldier. He was willing to put his eyesight at risk just to get one look at Joe Louis. Okay. Let's follow the script here. Okay. Now, Americans had many heroes during World War II. Some lay under white crosses on distant shores. Others returned home wounded beyond recognition. Many more were average young men who answered their country's call. Some carried rifles. Others loaded large naval guns or flew aircraft. But one of America's favorite heroes fought with his fists. When Joe Louis Burrell, known to America as Joe Louis, put on an army uniform in the early part of 1942, he wasn't just another young Black American. He was boxing's world heavyweight champion, a title he had held since 1937 at that time, okay? Born in Alabama in 1914, Louis was the seventh of 8 children born to Monroe and Lily Burrell. His father was a sharecropper who left when Louis was young. Louis's mother married a widower, and the family grew with the addition of his 6 children. With so many mouths to feed and fields to tend, Louis had very little formal education. He'd been slow to develop, slow to talk and walk, and when he did, he spoke with a stutter. Louis was considered a quiet, good-natured child who did as he was told and never made trouble. He was simply put, an unremarkable young man. Years of bad farming combined with rampant racism and escalating violence began to pull many Black Americans away from the South and farming. In 1926, Louis and his family moved north to Detroit, where the auto industry drew hundreds of thousands in search of better work and a better life. There, Louis attempted school, but by the 6th grade, he was underperforming and was sent to a trade school, where he found a curriculum suited him better. Now, times were hard, and by age 15, Louis left school to help support his family. It was in those years that an amateur boxer friend convinced Louis to spar with him. It was the beginning of a historic career. Yep. When he went and did that sparring. After that, the rest was history. Okay. Now, Lewis took to boxing quickly. And by mid-1934, after several years of learning not only how to fight, but how to win, he was victorious in 50 out of 54 amateur fights with 43 knockouts. Lewis was ready to go pro as a heavyweight and did so on July 4th, 1934, knocking out his opponent in the first round. His boxing career took off from there. Lewis quickly became a hero to the Black American community, and his handlers knew too well that a Black fighter walked a thin line in 1930s America. Okay? Now, outspoken and flamboyant Jack Johnson, once the heavyweight champion, had pushed the line too far in his private life and had suffered for it. Now, Joe Louis was Johnson's opposite outside the ring. Louis was naturally reserved, saying little and smiling even less. And Black America came to love him as he brought them hope during the bleak days of the Depression. In 1936, Louis prepared to face his most famous opponent yet, German boxer Max Schmeling. Now, although he not yet fought for the heavyweight championship, Louis had fought several former champions and won. His fans were confident Schmeling would be the next victim of their beloved Brown Bomber. The event sold out Yankee Stadium, and all of America listened. The celebrations, which had erupted in Harlem and other Black American neighborhoods in 1935 when Louis beat former champion Primo Carnera and Max Baer, were not heard that night. Louis and Schmeling went 12 rounds before the German boxer put Louis on the mat for good by knockout. Okay? No celebrations were heard that night. 1937 was a better year for Louis. He learned from his loss to Schmeling, trained harder, and on June 22nd, Louis faced the current heavyweight champion, Jim Braddock. The fight lasted 8 rounds before Louis knocked Braddock out. Across America, Black neighborhoods erupted in celebration. He was their hero, their champion, an example of what many of them felt they could be in a world of equality. For Louis, it was half a victory. Despite the magnitude of what being a heavyweight boxing champion meant, Louis wanted another shot at Max Schmeling. That chance came in 1938 with a rematch scheduled for Yankee Stadium on June 22nd. For millions, this was not just a fight. It was a literal fist fight of ideologies. A Black American boxer against a friend of Hitler, an example of the so-called German master race. By 1938, tension was growing between the United States and Germany. The 1937 heavyweight championship between Schmeling and Braddock was canceled due to threats of boycott, and there was a fear that if the German boxer took home the championship, Louis or any other American would never get the chance to fight for it again. Now, despite heavy propaganda against Schmeling, portraying him as the epitome of Nazi evil, it was unbeknownst to the public that Schmeling had never joined the Nazi Party and had saved the lives of 2 Jewish teenagers during the Kristallnacht raids. Okay? Schmeling was not a Nazi, but the public didn't know that. He was German, so he represented Hitler to everybody, especially Americans in the United States, Black and white Americans. Schmeling was a Nazi and he represented Hitler, so everybody hated him. Now, the hype around the fight grew as the date approached. Americans who had supported Schmeling in 1936 were swept up by the political wave washing over the fight and turned against him. The fight drew 70,000 to Yankee Stadium, an estimated 60 million Americans Nearly half the population of the country tuned in by radio, along with over 100 million worldwide. The bell rang. The fight began. 2 minutes and 4 seconds later, it was over. Lewis had knocked Smelling down 3 times before the referee declared a technical knockout and ended the fight, fearful that any further punishment would be fatal. Joe Louis was still the heavyweight champion. America went wild. Germany went silent. A testament to Lewis's performance was silence in German media. The win was too definitive to be disputed. So riding the high of defending his heavyweight championship, Lewis continued to box as the world sped towards war. In October 1940, Lewis registered for the draft. He was eager to do his part for his country, and his first opportunity came the next year when his manager suggested he donate his earnings from his upcoming fight to defend his championship title to the United States Navy Relief Society. Lewis agreed and was met with backlash from a large part of the Black American community. The United States Navy was the most staunchly segregated branch of the U.S. Armed Forces, and many felt betrayed that Lewis would donate funds to an organization that relegated Black Americans to servant roles as messmen and cooks. But Lewis was undeterred. No place else in the world could a one-time Black cotton picker like me get to be a millionaire. I love this country like I love my people, Lewis said. The controversy ended before the fight, when Japanese forces attacked the United States fleet at Pearl Harbor. Americans were all in the war together now, and Lewis became an even greater hero. Now, Lewis won the fight and donated $89,000 to the Navy Relief Society the day after he enlisted in the United States Army. Yep, the next day, he went in. There he is, getting the medal pinned on him right there. Joe Louis. Okay? Yeah, day after that fight, he donated that money to the Navy Relief Society. He went in the Army. Okay? So Lewis went to boot camp, but was never destined for combat. His greatest value to the war effort was in his popularity. In a time where few, if any, photos of Black soldiers in uniform were printed, a poster of Lewis became one of the most popular for war-bond advertisements. Dressed in full combat gear, wielding a rifle with a fixed bayonet, the poster quoted a line from a speech Lewis had given at a fundraiser. We're going to do our part and we'll win because we're on God's side. Okay? Yeah, that was we saw that. But we'll see it again. There it is. Yeah, that was the one. That was a very popular poster right there of Joe Louis. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, so he went to boot camp, but he was never destined for combat. Mm-mm. The slogan became wildly popular, boosting the idea that America was on the right side of the fight. The only fighting Lewis would do would be in the ring. He defended his title again in March 1942, raising money for the Army Emergency Relief Fund. Although there was no desire amongst military and political leaders to integrate the armed forces, they understood the need to appeal to Black Americans, and even more importantly, to portray America as a unified country against Nazi tyranny, regardless of what the truth actually was at home. To this end, Lewis was given the role of goodwill ambassador. The Army formed a traveling group of Black boxers which toured the United States and Europe. If he had an issue with an all-black boxing group, Lewis never spoke up. He did, however, refuse to box in front of segregated audiences. Yeah, Sugar Ray Robinson was a part of that group too, yeah. There he is there. Getting ready to spar against somebody. And the show was a hit, a mix of boxing and singing and dancing. And the singing and dancing was courtesy of Sugar Ray Robinson. In 1943, the tour spent 100 days on the road in the United States. By 1944, Lewis was in Europe, entertaining troops and shaking the hands of wounded men from the Normandy campaign, okay? In his book, Joe Louis, Randy Roberts explained the impact of Lewis's visits to troops, quoting one GI who watched Lewis perform and later wrote, "No movie star has been greeted by our fighting men with more enthusiasm than that displayed when the Brown Bomber got into action." Okay, when he visited the wounded troops, one GI whose eyes had been seriously hurt in the fighting asked the nurse to remove his bandages. And the nurse told him, he still had a chance to have his vision, but if they moved the bandages too early, he might lose his vision. But the guy told her to remove him anyway. "Just let me have one look at the Brown Bomber," he pleaded. "I'll take my chances with my eyesight," right? He just wanted one look at Joe Louis. He didn't care about losing his eyesight, right? He could always say that. He got to look at the Brown Bomber. And there's Joe Louis and Sugar Ray Robinson right there. There's Sugar Ray Robinson to his right. They had some event speaking. The Sugar Ray was part of that traveling group. They went around speaking and doing exhibitions. And they drew massive crowds wherever they went. Wherever they went, massive crowds. Now, behind the scenes, Lewis used the information gathered from talking to black troops to encourage positive changes. He even stepped in to help future baseball star Jackie Robinson when Robinson knocked out a white officer's front teeth. Robinson had stood up to the officer after he made racist remarks. And Lewis was able to intervene, keeping Robinson from being court-martialed or worse. And Robinson was allowed to continue officer candidate school. And also, if Joe Louis hadn't intervened, Jackie Robinson had he been court-martialed, he would never have been the one to integrate baseball. He wouldn't have broke baseball's color barrier. For court-martial on his record, they would have definitely picked somebody else. So yeah, Joe Louis saved all of that. Okay? That's another footnote of history. Okay, yeah. Joe Louis saved all of that. It was just another example of how Lewis was considered a savior of Black Americans during the war, right? He had the respect to stand up for his fellow man and the influence to make a difference. And Lewis's way of helping was in line with his personality, right? There were no loud speeches, no public displays, and no letters written. He would simply step in, ask a favor, or just make the request himself. That's all. Nothing major, right? Lewis is credited with helping to desegregate Army buses quietly and successfully. Now, despite his reserved personality, Lewis appeared in several films during the war, including Irving Berlin's This Is the Army and The Negro Soldier. Made with the hope of soothing growing racial tensions in the United States, Lewis was a central figure in the latter film, highlighting his fight with Smelling in 1938. It played up the war as a continuation of the fight between the two. Produced by Frank Capra, The Negro Soldier portrayed African Americans in a way rarely seen at the time, as patriotic and thoughtful, and with more personal depth the most contemporary portrayals of Black America. An Army film, it challenged segregation in the Army and in America. Lewis was once again a champion for his people and his country. Yep. Now, America had liked Lewis before the war. By 1945, they were in love with him. Awarded the Legion of Merit, the citation read in part, Staff Sergeant Burrell has entertained 2 million soldiers by frequent boxing exhibitions, which entailed considerable risk to his boxing future as the champion heavyweight of the world. But he willingly volunteered such action rather than disappoint the soldiers who desired to see him in the ring. Lewis was discharged in 1945, a hero to many, and ready to maintain his heavyweight title, which he did until his retirement in 1949. Now, he did return for a few fights, but lost his final fight to fellow Army veteran Rocky Marciano. The Brown Bomber retired for good, but he remained one of America's most beloved boxers and people's champions in hard times, and an example of a generation that rose up and overcame the challenges of the Great Depression and World War II. The Brown Bomber, Joe Louis. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the boxing at Madison Square Garden during the war, because 1945, the last year of the war, Madison Square Garden had the second most fights in its history, 43 fights at the Garden that year, okay, in 1943. And there's Madison Square Garden in 1945, right there. That's how it looked in 1945. The Garden. Okay, let's get into that. Madison Square Garden during the war. And a lot of fights up there. Okay, and there's the Garden. Mm-hmm. Now I think the sign has the word square spelled out, but back then it just had Madison SQ Garden. Madison Square Garden and boxing during World War II. There would be an understandable assumption to make. The 1945 was a low-key year for boxing. From west to east, the planet was in chaos due to World War II. It only officially ended for Americans after a formal surrender document was signed on September 2nd, 1945 in Japan. Okay. However, it was by no means a quiet year at one of the most famous arenas to stage the noble art. Madison Square Garden astoundingly hosted 43 shows in the history of the venue. Dating back, they hosted 43 shows that year. In the history of the venue, dating back to 1883, this has only been exceeded once. 44 events took place in 1931. In 1931, beat it by one fight. They had 44 that year. Okay? In 1945, the infamous promoter, Mike Jacobs, was still in charge of proceedings at the site, often referred to as MSG. Legendary names such as Bojack, Fritzy Zimmick, Willie Pep, Sandy Sadler, Rocky Graciano, and Ike Williams graced the iconic location with their skills during a year that the world was at war. Jake LaMotta and Sugar Ray Robinson also appeared, fighting each other in one of the fights in their historic rivalry. Yeah, their 1945 fight was at the Garden. Remember, we covered that yesterday. Mm-hmm. Sugar Ray was back from the war by then. Yeah, him and Jake had their fight up there. What's up, Sonny Boy Boxing? How are you today? Boxing during World War II. We're talking about boxing at Madison Square Garden during 1945, the final year of the war. And you would think it had slowed down, but Madison Square Garden had the second most fights in a year in their history that year, 43. Just had 44 in 1931. One behind the record that year, right? But salute, Sonny boy. Let's continue. Yeah, Sugar Ray and Jake fought there that year, 1945, too. Now, shows generally took place on a Fridays, with a few Mondays also included. On one occasion, there were 5 events held over just a 10-day period. The action proved popular, attendees using the entertainment as a form of escapism from the conflicts in the world, right? World War II. Of the aforementioned boxers, Graciano appeared 5 times that year. LaMotta, Zivit, and Sadler 4 times, while Williams got between the ropes at the Garden 3 times that year. Sugar Ray did so twice, while it was just a solo outing for Bojack, a man to headline Madison Square Garden a record 21 times. Now, Bojack only fought there once in 1945, but he had the most fights at the Garden of any fighter, 21 times, still the record. Bojack fought there 21 times in all, only once in 45, but over his career, 21 times at the Garden. Willie Pep also appeared just once that year, winning the world featherweight title for the first time. He beat Chalky Wright at the Garden. Okay, that year, 1945. Now, across the globe, there was only one other challenge for a world strap throughout the year. Ike Williams becoming lightweight champion in Mexico. The other recognized world champions of the time were Jackie Patterson, Gus Lesnovich, Manuel Ortiz, Tony Zale, and Joe Louis. Of course, Joe Louis was still away at the war that year. Now, Patterson never fought in America. Ortiz based himself on the West Coast. As for Lesnovich, Zale, and Louis, they never raised a fist in 1945. I believe all 3 of them were still in the military. Okay? So, as the world slowly returned to a certain level of normality, the large amount of fight nights continued at the Garden for many years. Okay? Throughout the 1950s, there were regularly well over 20 cards a year. The same can be said up to the mid-60s. However, after the 60s, they dropped significantly. The last time they hit double figures at MSG was 1972. This is not necessarily a sign of its demise. The ever-changing landscape of boxing and the frequency boxers now ordinarily perform has affected the number of shows, right? Boxers don't fight as much, so of course it's going to affect the number of shows at the Garden. There's the last big one. Madison Square Garden was once, that's Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz. Madison Square Garden was once considered the home of boxing, but now almost exclusively plays host to the biggest fights in the sport, such as Andy Ruiz Jr.'s stunning upset win over Anthony Joshua in June 2019. And of course, Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano was the first woman to headline a card. What was it, like 2021? 2020 something, remember? Katie and Amanda fought there. First time a women's fight headlined the card. It now only hosts big-time boxing, a result of which is the fact that since the York Hall opened in Bethnal Green back in 1967, it has hosted triple the amount of the events that MSG has over the same period, albeit of a generally small hall nature. The competition for hosting high-profile boxing events is also more intense than ever. Most likely the reason that on occasion, the Garden has gone a full year without providing squared circle entertainment. Many businesses are now offering locations with larger capacity and or an opportunity for those involved to make more money. There was still competition in the 1940s. Other primary venues included Olympia Stadium in Detroit, along with the Polo Grounds, the Yankee Stadium in New York. But there is now more than ever. Yeah, there wasn't all that many back in them days, rival places. Okay? Las Vegas was nowhere as big as it is now back in the 40s. Now, regardless of this, boxers still crave an appearance at MSG on their resume. This is despite the fact that the Garden has been demolished and rebuilt 4 times in 3 different locations. The building that currently sits at 4 Pennsylvania Place still stands tall amongst giant stadia, obscure cash havens, and the Las Vegas casino industry. In 2019, it hosted the most boxing events it had since 1978, including Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz. It will certainly never host 43 boxing events in a year again, but it is still to most the mecca of boxing, the Garden. Yes, it is. It's still the mecca of boxing. Okay? So now, let's talk about some boxers. Not necessarily during World War II, but some world champion boxers that also served in the military. Okay? The world champions that were military veterans. Okay? That's what we're going to do now. The world champions, they're the military veterans, okay? And there's James J. Braddock. I think that might be Tony Zale on the left there, okay? The boxers belonging to the fraternity. Okay, this is called We Are the Mighty. Boxers belonging to the fraternity of world champions who served. Boxers belonging to the fraternity of world champions who served. Let's get into that. I don't even have the thing up yet. Okay. That would help if I pull it up. Yeah. There we go. We Are the Mighty. Boxers belonging to the fraternity of world champions who served. Okay. Now, the relationship between military service and boxing is unparalleled by any other sport in the United States. Boxing has been used by all service branches as a form of self-defense training and a means to build discipline. Active service member boxers also compete in a variety of base-wide, inter-service, and USA Boxing sanctioned amateur tournaments throughout the year. Cadets at the United States Military Academy at West Point are required to take a boxing class as part of their freshman year curriculum. The West Point boxing team produced a fine all-Army boxer and pro fighter, Boyd Melson, who went on to capture the WBC United States Super Welterweight title in 2015. Okay? Melson is just one former Army boxer to find success in the professional ranks. Okay? James Dominguez, co-host of the popular boxing podcast, The Punchline with Kelly Pavlik and James Dominguez, that's the name of it, The Punchline with Kelly Pavlik and James Dominguez, and 4-time All-Army champion, describe Army boxers as the most conditioned and well-trained athletes in the world. They fight war in the ring and war on the battlefield. They adapt well and are flexible, something that is carried through the rest of their lives. Okay? The Marine Corps boxing team is so important to the branch's history. The notable former boxers are enshrined in the All-Marine Boxing Team Hall of Fame. Okay? A 2016 inductee into this illustrious Hall of Fame was Marine Corps veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Jamel Herring. Herring was the only Marine to compete on the 2012 London Olympics and the first active duty Marine to qualify for the United States Olympic boxing team since 1992. Herring turned professional in 2012 and went on to win the WBO Super Featherweight title in 2019. Jamel Semper Fi Herring. Yes, sir. Okay, now we're going to talk about some Jamel Semper Fi Herring. Yep, he was a WBO champion. Remember him? Gene Tunney. Gene Tunney was in the Marine Corps. Gene Tunney was the world heavyweight champion from 1926 to 1928. He put his budding professional boxing career on hold to enlist in the Marine Corps in 1917. During World War I, Tunney served with the 11th Marine Regiment in France and Germany, but saw no action. He spent most of the war and the ensuing occupation of the Rhineland on the Marine Corps boxing team. And he helped increase morale among his fellow homesick service members by participating in inter-service boxing tournaments, eventually winning the U.S. Expeditionary Forces Championship. Tunney retired from boxing in 1928, and during the Second World War, he answered his country's call again when he received a commission in the Naval Reserve. During the war, Tunney served domestically and oversaw military fitness programs. At the conclusion of hostilities, Tunney retired from the Navy as a captain. Gene Tunney. Now we got some World War I honorable mention boxers. Tunney wasn't the only notable boxer to serve his country during the First World War. World champions Johnny Colon, Johnny Kilbane, and Benny Leonard all served as instructors in the Army during the Great War. Okay. Another boxing champion that served his country, James J. Braddock. That's James J. Braddock all the way over on the left. They in training right there, okay? James J. Braddock. Non-boxing fans probably associate James J. Braddock with Russell Crowe, the actor who played the Pride of New Jersey in the 2005 film Cinderella Man. Yeah, Russell Crowe played him in the movie. Now, Braddock retired from pro boxing in 1938, having held the world heavyweight title from 1935 to 1937. At the outbreak of World War II, he enlisted in the Army and became a commissioned officer. Captain Braddock trained service members in hand-to-hand combat techniques on Saipan in the Pacific Theater. James J. Braddock, okay? Jack Dempsey served in the military. The Manasseh Mauler. That's Jack in the middle there. See him? It's Jack in the middle. Great y'all, Israel. Hashtag TWT. Salute. Good to see you today. We're just talking about a little boxing, and we're doing World War II, and right now we're just talking about some championship boxers that served in the military. Now, all these boxers didn't serve during World War II, but now we've got to the portion where we're talking about world champions who served. But salute from the winning team. Great group of men and women, great organization, the winning team. But salute the great Yah Israel. Okay, yeah, Jack Dempsey served in the military. Yes, he did. That's Jack in the middle there. Now, Jack Dempsey won the World Heavyweight Championship in 1919. And during World War I, members of the American public criticized him for not joining the military. Now, Dempsey had the opportunity for redemption 2 decades later. At the outbreak of the Second World War, he was then pushing 50 years old, but he received his commission in the Coast Guard Reserve, so he did get his redemption. He got criticized for not joining the First World War, but he went in the second one, almost 50 years old. Dempsey worked as a fitness instructor, raised war bonds, and he served at sea in the Pacific Theater. He received an honorable discharge from the Coast Guard Reserve in 1952. Yep, Jack Dempsey, that's him in the middle there. Yep, got criticized for not serving in one, but then he served in two. Jack did, so he got his redemption. Okay, Tommy Loughlin served. There's Tommy. Yeah, that's Tommy. I thought it was James J. Braddock on the other picture. That was Tommy Loughlin. Tommy Loughlin. Philadelphia's Tommy Loughlin held the world light heavyweight title between 1927 and 1929. The popular fighter, known for his numerous acts of charity in his hometown, retired from pro boxing in 1937. At the outbreak of World War II, Loughlin, he was around 40 years old at that time, he enlisted in the Marine Corps. He served as a fitness instructor at stateside military installations, including the Philadelphia Navy Yard. Now, John DeSanto, founder of PhillyBoxingHistory.com, described Loughlin as famous and wealthy, but a patriotic American who still wanted to serve his country. DeSanto added, "I know the entire nation pulled together during World War II, but it shows the type of guy Loughlin was. He too did his part, even though he probably didn't have to." Yep, Tommy Loughlin. Man of Steel, Tony Zale. This one is kind of funny here. Tony Zale joined the military, right? Now, you know his real name was Tony Zaleski. His ring name was Tony Zale. Now, the Man of Steel, Tony Zale, captured the world middleweight title with a victory over Georgie Abrams on November 28, 1941. Okay? So Zale lost a non-title fight to fellow World War II veteran Billy Conn, who was in the Army, on February 13, 1942. After the fight, Zale enlisted in the Navy. Now, upon reporting to boot camp at Naval Station Great Lakes, the registration officer asked what his name was and occupation. And Zale gave his real name, not his ring name. He told him his name was Anthony Zaleski, and his occupation was middleweight boxer. And the officer replied, "You a boxer? I'd hate to be in your shoes, because the middleweight champion, Tony Zale's due to report here this weekend." So the man said, "You a boxer, Tony Zale gonna come here and challenge you." He didn't know he was talking to Tony Zale. He was using his real name. He told him, "I feel sorry for you, Tony Zale gonna be here this weekend." But that was Tony Zale, right? Yeah, that's what he told him. Tony Zale's reporting. Okay. Now, Zale, who relatives described as a man who loved his country and wanted to protect it at any cost, taught hundreds of service members valuable hand-to-hand combat skills, incorporating a number of boxing techniques. Now, Tony's nephew and author of the book, Tony Zale, The Man of Steel, Thad Zale, recounts that he was approached by a veteran at a book signing who told him that the training he received from his uncle was the difference between life and death one time, right? The man told Thad in the Ardennes force, he had run out of ammunition and was taken by surprise when the Germans rushed their line. He said he stepped quickly to his left as the Germans thrust his bayonet at him and hit him full steam with his right hand. Knocked him out. Right here, learned this from Tony Zale. Caught the German with the right hand and knocked him out. Then he took his bayonet and settled the affair. Then he's saying that punch he learned from Tony Zell saved his life because he had ran out of ammunition, right? And he caught this German with a right hand and knocked him out. Then took his bayonet and killed him. Now, some World War II honorable mention boxers. Lightweight world champion Bo Jack and Bob Montgomery also served in the Army during the Second World War. Two-time world featherweight champion Willie Pep served in both Navy and Army during the war. Silver Star recipient Barney Ross, lightweight and welterweight champion, and Carmen Rosillo, welterweight and middleweight champion, were other world champions who served in the Marine Corps during World War II. Okay. Lou Jenkins. More world champions who served. Lou Jenkins. In his 2018 book, From Boxing Ring to the Battlefield, The Life of War Hero Lou Jenkins, author Gene Pantalone described former world champion Lou Jenkins as a man who fought his whole life. As a child, Jenkins battled extreme poverty during the Great Depression in the Texas Dust Bowl and fought in alleys and carnivals for meager wages on the path to becoming a pro boxer in 1935. Jenkins held the world lightweight title between 1940 and 1941 before joining the Coast Guard during World War II. He served with him and Jack Dempsey served together, right? And Jenkins later served gallantly in the Army during the Korean War. In From Boxing Ring to Battlefield, Pantalone wrote, in World War II, Jenkins fought in major battles, including the D-Day Normandy invasion, winning British recognition in his valor with a citation. During the Korean War, he fought in two of the fiercest battles of the war, Bloody Ridge and Heartbreak Ridge, earning one of the U.S. Army's highest decorations, a Silver Star for bravery. Yeah. Now we come up more up to modern times to some champions who served. Merciless, Ray Mercer. There's him and Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan got his gold medal on that he won. I think Ray Mercer was on the 84 team, I believe. I did not know that, but he won a gold medal, yeah. Had to be 84 because they didn't go in 80. And Ronald Reagan was president after 88, so it had to be 84, right? If he did it for Ronald Reagan was president with a gold medal, right? Process of elimination. Now, before capturing the World Boxing Organization WBO heavyweight title in 1991, he went to the service before boxing. Ray Mercer served as a soldier in West Germany. There, the former Army brat took up boxing at the age of 23 years old. Excuse me. Mercer credits the Army with teaching him the fundamentals of the sport in which he found so much success. As an Army boxer, Mercer found success as an amateur, winning gold medals at the 1988 Seoul Olympic Games. Yeah, 88 was Ronald Reagan's last year, I guess, right? Yeah. He won it. I didn't think he was on 84. 88. He won gold in 88 at the Seoul Olympic Games. He carried over his success as an amateur to the pro ranks in 1989. Mercer won 16 straight pro fights on the path to a world championship. Merciless, Ray Mercer. Now let's look at the two Marine Corps veteran boxers who beat Muhammad Ali. Two of Muhammad Ali's 5 career losses came at the hands of Marine Corps veterans, okay? Kenny Norton. That's Kenny 4 from the right. See, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's Kenny, wait, yeah. On in front, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's Kenny 4 from the right in the front row. Ken Norton. Yeah, Muhammad lost to 2 Marine Corps veterans. The first one was Ken Norton. And me and Ken Norton did the exact same job in the military. He was in there way before me, but we did the same job. I found that out when I was reading this about a few years ago. Ken Norton, known as the Fighting Marine, Throughout his professional career, served from 1963 to 1967 in the Marine Corps. During his time in the Marines, Norton took up boxing while serving as a manual Morse intercept operator. Now, he copied Morse code to intercept foreign communications. I used equipment and printed it out on the printer. I didn't do no. I knew Morse code, but I used the printer. No, we had Morse code operators at every base I went to too. They sit there and listen. Da diddy da dot dot dot. I knew that, but I used printers. I was a printer. He was like a Morse code operator. I was a printer systems operator, but we had the same job. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I know that was too much information. Anyway, he won 3 All-Marine heavyweight titles and compiled an impressive amateur record, Ken did, yeah. Now, Norton turned professional shortly after his discharge from the Marines in 1967. His shot at former world heavyweight champion at the time came on March 31st, 1973, when he defeated Ali by split decision. Yeah, Ali hadn't won the title yet. I mean, when he fought Norton the first time, he wasn't champion. He beat Foreman the next year, I believe. 1974, the Rumble in the Jungle. But the second Marine Corps fighter to beat Muhammad Ali was Leon Spinks. Leon Spinks. Leon Spinks served in the Marines between 1973 and 1976. Fighting on the Marine Corps boxing team, Spinks went on to win a gold medal as a light heavyweight at the 1976 Montreal Olympic Games, right? And then the following year after the Montreal Games, he turned professional and won his first 5 fights by way of knockout. And then he defeated Ali his 8th pro fight. He was a 7-fight novice. His 8th pro fight, he beat Muhammad Ali by split decision in a world heavyweight title fight on September 15th, 1978. Yep. Those were the 2 Marine Corps veterans who beat Muhammad Ali, Ken Norton and Leon Spinks. Okay. USS Steve Cunningham. Philadelphia, Steve Cunningham served in the Navy from 1994 to 1998. He kicked off his amateur career as a sailor assigned to Norfolk Naval Station in Virginia. In the Navy, Cunningham was a member of the crews of the USS America and USS Enterprise. A National Golden Gloves champion in 1998, Cunningham turned pro in 2000. Cunningham held the IBF Cruiserweight title between 2007 and 2008, and again between 2010 and 2011. A tribute to his service in the Navy, Cunningham adopted the ring moniker USS. Yep. Okay, there you have it. We are the mighty. Boxers belonging to the fraternity of world champions who serve. One more thing now. We have this, I told you the smoker events on board the ships were called, they were fight cards, they called them smokers. They were just to lift up morale among the fighters. And, fighters have a beef, put the gloves on. And for this one smoker, this fight card we're going to talk about on this ship, President at the time, Harry S. Truman, was in attendance. He was on board the ship coming back from overseas somewhere. And because that was the year they signed the treaty. I don't know if he was coming from that, but he was on this ship when they had this fight card, right? And so let's talk about that. Okay. Yeah, this is the final thing we have about World War II today. Okay. We're going to talk about this smoker event. Just a fight card on the ship. Smoker was what they called them. That's all that was. There you go again, trying to go up, and I'm already at the top. Yeah. There's the guy whose son told the story on the left. Okay, his son told the story about this with Harry S. Truman. Who was it? I think it was Harry Truman on board the ship. Okay. Here we go. This is called How an Underdog Won a Boxing Match on a Warship in Front of President Truman. Okay. His name was Joseph Spotwood. There he is fighting another sailor during a smoker event with President Truman in attendance on August 7th, 1945. The photo was courtesy of his son, Chase Spotwood. Yeah, because the war ended. I think they signed the thing on August 5th. So he probably was coming from the treaty signing, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, let's, I don't know, get into that. I'm old, but I wasn't born until 1945. I ain't that old. Okay. So, at 17 years old, Joseph Joe Spotwood falsified his paperwork to join the Navy in 1944 as World War II was in full swing. He was aboard the USS Augusta during the Normandy invasion and took part in other battles during the war. But that wasn't the only fighting Spotwood did during his time in the military, okay? Spotwood had a passion for boxing, and as a brawler, the sailor sometimes found himself squaring off against stronger and tougher opponents. And on at least one occasion, he did so in front of a sitting United States president on the deck of a Navy warship, just as World War II drew to a close. On August 7th, 1945, on board the USS Augusta, a Northampton-class cruiser, Spotwood participated in a Navy smoker in front of Truman, who was aboard the ship for his return from Europe, according to the sailor's son, Chase Spotwood. Yeah, and there's some of the other fighters. That's Spotwood, second from left. Second from left. Okay? 5 other sailors who all boxed aboard the USS Augusta. Now, Spotwood, he got to meet with Truman, shake his hand, and Truman grabbed a napkin and wrote on it, "Many thanks to Joe Spotwood for a wonderful fight." And he signed it, President Harry Truman. That's what Chase Spotwood said of his father. Okay? Now, smokers were boxing events held aboard Navy ships, whether in port or out at sea, right? That's what a smoker was. That's a fight card on a ship between the sailors. They call them smokers. Now, the fights began as informal slugging bouts between sailors, but over time became more prevalent, albeit not formally regulated. You know, you have a beef with another sailor, put the gloves on, man. Yeah, instead of getting Article 15 or something for fighting. In the military, you know, when they punish you, they punish you. They give you Article 15. They hit your pocket. They take your money. They make you think twice about getting into trouble. You know, they don't deal with no suspensions and stuff. You get in trouble in the military, they take your money. They make you think twice about messing up. But you know, you get in trouble, Article 15, they gonna take your money from you, right? So that's smart. That's how you keep discipline to the person's pocket. There's 2 fighters participating in a smoker right there on board. That's the one where President Truman was at, okay? This was August 7th, 1945. President Harry S. Truman was in attendance. Now, the Navy said smokers were used as a way to boost morale, which is how Spotwood came to fight in front of Harry Truman. Spotwood's smoker event occurred after the Potsdam Conference, where world leaders discussed terms for the end of World War II. As the summit concluded, Truman and other dignitaries boarded the USS Augusta for their return trip to the United States. Yeah, planes wasn't that old then, and I guess Truman wasn't trusting no airplane to fly all the way across the ocean. I would have got on a ship too, you know. That was the infancy of airplane travel back around that time. Yeah. So they were coming back for their conference talking about end of the war. That's how Truman came to be on the ship. What's up, Just Do Boxing? How are you, my brother? Yeah, we just ending our little talk about World War II. Just Do Boxing. That unbiased, balanced boxing talk, 4 p.m. every day, where everybody gets their just due. That Just Do Boxing. Okay, salute Just Do. Yeah, we're talking about this thing called a smoker, which were just fight cards aboard Navy ships. And this one was in front of President Harry Truman in 1945, right? So, according to memos and newspaper clippings about Spotswood's fight, which were provided to the site that did this article by Chase Spotswood, his son, it wasn't just boxing that provided entertainment to the 33rd president of the United States, but included a Navy band. However, for the main event, 4 weight class boxing fights served as prize fights for the evening. They had 4 different weight classes, 4 fights on the card. Okay? Now, Spotswood squared off against an opponent with the last name of Golson. That he was unable to confirm the complete identity of the other service members involved on this fight card. Now, Spotswood had told his son he was not favored going into the fight, not favored to win. The guy was bigger than him, had more reach, but Dad outdanced him, running around the ring, and ended up knocking the guy out, said his son Chase Spotswood. He was very proud of the fact that he won that fight. I think he probably surprised even President Truman. Maybe even more surprising, according to Chase Spotswood, was that the boxing exposition abruptly ended after the ring collapsed during the last fight. Well, at least they got to the last fight before the ring collapsed, right? Now, though boxing fights aboard ships are rare today, Spotswood's fight back in 1945 offered something he and his fellow sailors desperately needed. The smoky events, they were stress relievers, Chase Spotswood said. I'm sure there was some hooch or something made on board and passed around. It was like the holiday on the ship. Yeah, you know they had something to drink on there. They probably had a Class 6 store. Military bases, especially overseas, you call them. Class 6 stores is a liquor store. Everybody gets a card and you can only buy so much liquor per month. But of course, all you do is find somebody to drink, and when you use your amount up on your card, use their card, right? So yeah, always a way around everything. Okay? Yeah. So there's what is that? Okay, there's something. Oh, that's the newspaper clipping of the fight. And there's President Truman eating with some of the troops on board the ship right there. Now, Spotswood was aboard the USS Augusta at the start of America's involvement in World War II, when Operation Overlord began in the early morning hours of June 6, 1944. He was aboard the same ship when the U.S. dropped the atomic bomb over Hiroshima, Japan, on August 6, 1945. And guess who else was on the ship? They were on the ship and were the first people to know that the atom bomb had been dropped, because guess who else was on the ship when the bomb was dropped? That was the time when the President Truman was also on the ship when that bomb was dropped. So they were some of the first people to know. And he announced to the men on the ship when the bomb was dropped. So I guess that's my father's part of history, said Chase Spotswood. Now, Spotswood's time aboard the Augusta is something he held dearly, long after he hung up his uniform and joined the civilian workforce. following the end of the war on September 2nd, 1945. He was a Honda motorcycle dealer for many years, and he had a common sales pitch for his customers. He would tell them, he would greet people, shake the hand that shook the hand of the man that shook the world, right? Because he gave the order to drop that bomb, right? So yeah, he said, shake the hand that shook the hand of the man that shook the world. Okay, yeah, there you have it. Boxing during World War II. Yeah, tomorrow is going to be, we're going to talk about the 70s, which was the golden age of boxing. But we're not going to talk about Ali and Frazier and Foreman and Norton and Holmes and all them. We're going to talk about four boxers that you don't hear about that. That's basically forgotten nowadays, but they helped make the 70s the golden age. And they were Ron Lyle, Jerry Quarry, Jimmy Young. I forgot the third one momentarily. Jimmy Young, Jerry Quarry, Ron Lyle, and Jerry Cooney. None of them won titles because they fought in that era. But any era before the 70s or after the 70s, they would definitely have been champions. All great boxers. And they helped make the golden era, the golden age, the golden age. They would all probably be undisputed nowadays. They could be any of these champions nowadays, any of them. Yeah. Usyk probably would have stayed at light heavyweight in the 70s because he was no cruiserweight. He wouldn't even went up to heavyweight against them killers. He probably would have stayed at light heavyweight. And light heavyweight was in the 80s was the best decade of all for light heavyweight. So yeah, back then. But that's tomorrow. And then Thursday is going to be boxing in Cuba. And then Friday is going to be, it's the first Friday of the month, so we're going to profile an active boxer. It's going to be Earl the Truth Spence. He is still active, right? I guess he hasn't fought since 2023, since that Bud fight. And yeah, Bud is fighting. I mean, yeah, Earl haven't fought since then, since 2023, right? It's been 2 years because that fight was in July. Going into the third year now. So I guess Earl is still active. He's been talking about fighting. He just haven't been back in there yet, right? And now he don't have a fight. He was talking about Virgil Ortiz one time, but now Virgil is fighting Lubin. Yeah, fighting Lubin. Him and Boots fighting basically around the same. Boots fighting in October, I think, Virgil in November. So maybe they'll get together next after that. Okay. Seems like Boots' team talking about it, but Virgil and Golden Boy, his team ain't saying nothing about Boots. Do they want to fight? Because Eddie Hearn has said he wanted Boots and Virgil to be Boots' first fight. That's 54. That was last month. The Virgil said he wasn't ready. Nobody mentioned Duck, which I don't think it was a Duck. But Boots and Virgil wasn't even in the same division. They was talking about Boots was Duck, and he was at 147. So people need to keep the same energy. But I don't think either one of them was Duck, But maybe they get together next year. But to me, Virgil seemed like he don't even want to fight, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. 4 years ago, he said it needs 4 years. I guess that 4 years is up. What, he need 4 more years? He saw that Stanionis fight. Mm-hmm. Him and Stanionis basically fight the same. So he probably figured that's going to be him. But see, Virgil ain't going to quit on the stool. Virgil going out on his shield, so he'll probably get knocked out. Because he's coming back out there. He's not going to quit on the stool like Stanionis. But I guess the man couldn't come back. He knew what was going to happen, so, he made a business decision. Like Ryan Garcia did, like Jamel did, Ryan went down on that knee and saw Tank over there, mouth watering, and Ryan said, well, I already earned my biggest payday. I'm already stopped, and if I get up, I'm going to get stopped, and it might be a worse stoppage, so I might as well just take this stoppage right here and stay on this knee, right? They made a business decision. Mel said he felt them punches Canelo was putting on him, and Mel said, yes, I don't know what my biggest payday. I'm a cruise. I'm going to stay away from it. He ain't gonna mess me up. Heaven Ford said. But I don't think Bud gonna do that. Bud gonna be in there batting, but he's still gonna lose, I think. But I don't know. But we got 5 cards this weekend. We got 1 Thursday, 3 Friday, 1 Saturday, and probably some more somewhere. But then also next weekend, Canelo and Bud is the 13th, and the Monster and MJ is the 14th. So wow, man, that's next weekend's going to be huge, and it's fight week, yeah. And then Monster card is loaded with some pretty good Japanese fighters too. Sunday, the 14th. I think somebody said it's going to start like 12:30, so that'd be right around the time when Bud and Canelo ending, you know. And the Monster card be on ESPN, so we ain't got to pay for that. Bud and Canelo, I think, what is that? Netflix or something? One of them sites. Yeah, but don't forget tomorrow to join me for what's the title of this show? I already got it ready. Forgotten Heavyweights from the Golden Age. This is the title right here. Young, Quarry, Law, and Cooney. Forgotten Heavyweights from the Golden Age. Okay, we're going to have our fight of the day first, and then we're going to get on into the Forgotten Heavyweights of the Golden Age. Okay? Can't tell you the fight of the day yet. You find that out tomorrow. It's a good one, though. Very good one. Back from the 50s. Yeah, back from the 50s. And I believe our trilogy Monday is going to be Floyd Patterson and Ingemar Johansson. That was a great trilogy. All 3 fights ended in knockout, okay? Ingemar Johansson won the first one. He knocked Floyd down 7 times in like 3 rounds before he stopped him. And then Floyd stopped him in the second 2 fight. I think the 3rd fight, Ingemar was out like over 5 minutes or something. Yeah, that's gonna be Monday, that trilogy. Yeah. And we got a good show Thursday. Our country we do a different country on Thursday. It's Cuba this week, so we're gonna get a good boxing history from Cuba. And Friday is Earl, first Friday of the month in active boxing. Earl the True Spence, semi-active, right? He hasn't fought since 2023. The Bud loss. Might not never fight again. Does Earl have a fight? I didn't see him on the schedule anywhere. Yeah, that one card is loaded. The one with Abdullah Mason in this first fight. Matias on that card, Beterbiev. Beterbiev is like 4 or 5 fights down the card. Artur Beterbiev, man. The headline card. That card is loaded, man. Let me see if I can get it quick before we get out of here. That is in I think it's November. That thing. It's got that's the one Devin and Brian Norman is on, remember? Mm-hmm. The headline is Benavidez and Yard, right? That's the one, I think. Yeah, here it is. Here, I almost got it. We got 5 this weekend though, but the fall schedule is starting to take shape and it's looking good, man. Let me get to that one. That's in November. That card is loaded. That might be the best card of the year. I think that's when where Benavidez and Yard is headlining. That's in November, right? Let me see. Come on. I just was looking at it before I started. Okay, let me get ready to get up out of here. Just Do Boxing comes up at 4 p.m. today. Come on, where is it? September. No, yeah, anyway, that card is loaded with some good Japanese fighters Sunday night. And they say it starts right after next Sunday. Right after Bud and Canelo wins. Of course, we got the big rematch coming up in November too. Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. Here we go. November 22nd from Riyadh. Riyadh season card. Yeah, Benavidez and Yard is the headliner. Then we got Jesse Bam is on there on that card against Fernando Martinez. Didn't he fight him before? Or was that Fernando? I'm not sure. We got Abdullah Mason and Sam Noakes on that card. That's for Abdullah's first title. Going for his first test, the WBO. We got that's Brian Norman and Devin on that card. Now I got Benavidez over Yard. Okay, I got Jesse Bam winning that one over Martinez. Then we got Abdullah. I got Abdullah over Noakes. Then we got Devin and Brian Norman. I got Devin in that one. Subriel Matias on the card. Dalton Smith. I got Subriel. But Turbiev is like 5 fights down the card. He's fighting Dion Nicholson. That Arthur. That could be the card of the year, man. Wow. What's up, Ray Patterson? Straight out of New Jersey. What's up, RP? Okay. How are you today? Yeah, we winding down, just talking about some of this great fall schedule that's shaping up now for us. Yeah, that card there, man, is loaded. Wow. All the stars on there. That's the Riyadh season joint. Oh, Turkey. Yeah, Turkey is gonna be my first interview. He don't know it yet. Yeah. My people gotta call his people and set it up. Okay, Turkey out of Sheik will be my first ever interview. I don't know when it's gonna be. I'll let you know. Okay, but yeah, make sure you join me tomorrow. The Young, Quarry, Lyles, and Cooney. Forgotten heavyweights of the Golden Age. That's gonna be a good one. We're gonna touch on those of the forgot. They made the 70s the golden. They were part of making the 70s the golden age too, right? Cooney came along late in the 70s, but he was a part of it. He did most of his work in the 80s, but he came along late in that 70s. Fort Holmes, and yeah, those guys are forgotten nowadays. But none of them won titles because of the era they fought in. If they fought now, either any of those guys would be undisputed. Right? We have all 4 belts. Hold them as long as they wanted to hold them. Or before the 70s, he would have been champions. But in that era, it just was Ali, Foreman, Frazier, Norton, Holmes. Just too much, man. Shavers, Jimmy Ellis, and Jimmy Young, man. You know, Holmes wouldn't fight, yo. Holmes said they wasn't paying him enough money to get in there with Jimmy Young. That style he had. He could box, you know. Jimmy Young could. He was a boxer. Yeah, we're gonna talk about it tomorrow. When we get back in here. But I appreciate everybody for stopping through today. Okay. For another Cast Sports. Appreciate everybody 1000%. We're gonna get ready to call it a show. Everybody hit the like and subscribe. I'm like 30 something away from 1,000. I'm stuck on 960 something. You know, but everybody hit the like and subscribe. Get your grandkids if you got it in your kids' phones. And call somebody walking by down the street and get them to say, come here, subscribe to Cast. You subscribe to Cast Sports. Yeah. Everywhere I go, I be stopping people. People look at me like I'm crazy. Boxing. I don't follow boxing, but you can still subscribe. They ain't gonna hurt you. And I'll go on there at YouTube and find it for them. There it is right there. Okay. Just subscribe. Don't cost you nothing. Okay. But I appreciate everybody. Okay. And we'll be back tomorrow with another one. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's The Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Just Do Boxing is coming up next. This is Cast Sports. Everybody have a great afternoon.